Here is Ben Shapiro. This is a beautiful genre. This is clip number 13. This is a beautiful genre of right-wing talking. You know, this is where Ben Shapiro reminds me of Rush Limbaugh. There was I used to listen to Limbaugh quite a bit back in the day when I would do a 7 to 10 or a 6 to 9 radio show. And I distinctly remember an episode, and this must have been somewhere around the mid-aughts, where I'm listening to him, and he is talking about tinfoil, essentially tinfoil being placed on a glacier, I think it was in Switzerland. And because it was melting, and he was reading, and I do the same thing. I have stories that I've picked out, and I highlight them in yellow. And I think he probably had a production crew that at that point would highlight the stories in yellow. He never read through them. He'd see the headline. And he was basically making the argument that environmentalist tree huggers had gone crazy. They are so convinced of this hoax about global warming that they have put tinfoil on a glacier. That's how insane these environmentalists have gone. And he reads on. Environmentalists were upset about the tinfoil that was placed on the glacier by the owners of the ski resort who were trying to maintain the ice in warming conditions.
Ski owners are nuts.
We got to take a break. We'll be right back. He hadn't read the whole thing.
Crazy.
He hadn't read the thing.
Clearly.
And didn't realize that the story actually proved the exact opposite of what he was talking about.
I can relate.
Which was that, in fact, global warming was impacting the capitalists who own the ski resort. And environmentalists were like, hey, this is going to be damaging to the environment that you're trying to prevent the water flows, and you're contaminating some of this runoff water. And he just misread it. I imagine on some level, that's what Ben Shapiro did here in some way. But of course, he doesn't have the full story. He's just sort of winging it. He's just doing the classic right-wing play, which is anything that is in any way new or different than what you've experienced is by definition completely wacko. You've been living your life where every day, you know, your coffee's on your left and your water's on your right, and someday you show up at work and it's mixed up. And that means that, of course, they're coming to get you. By them, I mean the Muslims or the gays or the transgenders or the whoever it is. And Ben knows who his audience is. They're old people who just don't have the, or they're closed-minded people who just don't have the ability to even be aware that people are identifying themselves in a pronoun that may seem in some way alien to them. But instead, he needs to make it about science because he doesn't seem to understand that what language is.
The polarization of the American public continues apace, with woke scolds doing their best to ruin every aspect of American life. I'm very excited that Merriam-Webster Dictionary has now added the non-binary pronoun they to the dictionary. Because when I look at a book for definitions of words, what I want is a made-up definition of a word that has never been used this way in all of human history, a plural noun used as a singular noun to refer
Pause
to
it. Well, put aside the pettiness of like the idea that there could be a new word, which incidentally, woke scolds, I do not believe you would find in the dictionary, which I find very polarizing. That all of a sudden he's using a word I've never heard before. But wait a sec, keep that up because, I'll go right here to, he's complaining about the Merriam-Webster dictionary. Well, the Oxford English Dictionary at its blog writes that it traces the singular they back to 1375. Yes, where it appears in the medieval romance William and the Werewolf. On top of which, they argue that if it's in writing in 1375, it was likely in oral use way before then.
The werewolf is a non-binary species.
Yes, it's likely that the singular they was common even before the late 14th century. That makes it an old form even older. In the 18th century, grammarians began warning that singular they was an error because a plural pronoun can't take a singular antecedent. They clearly forgot that singular you was in fact a plural pronoun that had become singular as well. You functioned as a polite singular for centuries, but in the 17th century, singular you replaced thou, thee, and thy, except for some dialect use. And then it just goes on to talk about how at different times people have had different perspectives on this. But let's let Ben continue with his completely unfounded assertion that this is the first time a plural term has been used in the form of the singular since the dawn of man.
Of a word that has never been used this way in all of human history, a plural noun used as a singular noun to refer to a singular gender. We're going to use a plural noun. And Merriam-Webster is going to go along with this, which just demonstrates once and for all that logic has gone out the window. People are tailoring science to meet politically correct demands. People are tailoring.
I would say also, this is not science to me. This is language. Language to me. Can we come up with other ways in which we call for language to reflect a political perspective? Yes, we can, because it happens every day on all sides of politics. In fact, wake scold is a word that fits his political ideology and is, I would add, made up.
Yeah. There's some logic. Is what is not a made-up word?
Exactly. There's all these words, like the idea that we could just have a printing press and create words.
Language to meet politically correct demands. Merriam-Webster, according to the Washington Post, has added a new definition of the word they to its dictionary, declaring the pronoun may be used to refer to a single person whose gender identity is non-binary. They, according to the Washington Post, is a liberating pronoun for many non-binary individuals. What the hell is a liberating pronoun? How does a pronoun liberate you? Were you in shackles and then someone said they and now you're out of the shackles? What kind of nonsense?
Here is where Ben doesn't seem to understand the concept of metaphor. Obviously, you are not in physical shackles, but to the extent that language can restrict you, and in fact, that's what it is, right? Language is a definition. By definition, a word defines you. And if you feel that the pronoun in some way defines you in a way that is not accurate as to your definition of self, then they would be liberated.
Was Ben being shackled when The Economist called him alt-right?
I guess he had to unshackle himself from that limited definition.
How does a pronoun liberate you? Were you in shackles and then someone said they and now you're out of the shackles? What kind of nonsense is this? For many Americans, the use of they as a singular pronoun can be ungrammatical and confusing. That would not be for many Americans. That would be for all Americans, unless you're talking about the small group of SJWs who decide we have to redefine all of language in order to meet politically correct demands. It is insane. And then you wonder why the same people who demand truth, absolute truth. We're the media and we want the truth. Also, they is a singular pronoun. Not what now?
All right. Look, a lot of people I know at this point expect me to comment on his inability to deliver like a decent comedic double take. A lot of people think it's easier than that. You know, he obviously can't. He does like a triple take.
Should we try to take another look here?
Yeah, let's try. Let's just look at that. Only because I made quite a bit of money doing a double take on many sitcoms. Ben, incapable of doing it. I don't want to get caught up on this, but it is worth looking at again.
Also, they is a singular pronoun. Not what now?
I mean, there's a
See
lot
why
of different
Ben
ways that
had
you
trouble
could,
selling those scripts.
What? That's one way of doing it. There's a lot of different ways. I got a special glasses version on the double take. But can you imagine how disturbing it would be to see in print the idea of they being used to communicate the notion of a singular person? Like the idea that they could refer to one.
No.
Any one person referring to themselves as they would be extremely disturbing to see it in print. For instance, let's look at this Ben Shapiro tweet. Click on this. Here it is. If anyone on the right suggested that Fredo is the N-word for Italians or that fake news is the N-word for journalists, they'd be correctly run out of town on a rail of insensitivity. I'm sorry. If anyone, meaning an individual,
does not compute.
they'd, that's so strange.
It's bull crap. It's confusing. I don't know what it even means.
It's the first time in history that's ever happened.
That is the first time in history, except for that was back in 2019. And then back in 2016, as Emanzadi said, telling a Trump fan, they're being conned is like telling your friend not to marry a stripper. Now, your friend is singular, as a Trump fan is singular, then why are we referring to them as they? Booge. Exactly. Oh, I know why. Because their gender is maybe non-binary in the context of that. That Trump fan could be male or female. Interesting. And I loved Lost, he wrote back in 2010, but dude, period. Can anybody get a happy ending while they're alive? Can anybody, not anybody's, can folks get a happy no, it is when an individual. Fascinating.
I literally, okay. I actually thought Ben was, I thought Ben was trying to make a joke.
Oh, yeah, no.
He was like, let me try my hand at comedy.
Is
it really a happy ending? You're still
so-
alive? What about the cleanup process?
So
The whole thing is bullcrap.
It's almost like he doesn't really care about the grammar.
here's one more time. LOL, David Limbaugh, if anyone,
Imagine doing that.
That
in
is
life.
funny. That's funny. That's funny.
if anyone thinks this president believes in the Second Amendment, they're nuts. I need to rest after that. It is so taxing to see they refer back to a singular person. Fascinating. A singular person. It's just, wow.
Donald Trump is the only conservative who understands comedy and language.
That's true.
It's true.
It's remarkable that
He's incredible. I actually understands it better than most liberals, in fact. And then besides that, it's just completely a desert.
I mean, to be fair, Ben Shapiro's a philosopher and not a linguist.
That's true. He is
Not the
more
cool
known
kid's
for
linguist.
the
That's
precision. Yes, he is
McWhorter.
the precision of his logic, not his language.
Folks,
Which are, of course, not connected.